What's going on, everyone? It's Elias here at the Rainy Forge, back with another video. I'm going to hopefully try and keep this one a little bit shorter for you guys, since I just did a nice long form video. But I got this absolutely kick-ass project that I'm working on, and I just couldn't not share it with you guys. So, let's jump right into it. My dad commissioned me to make a knife for a buddy of his and his wife, and he wanted to do a kitchen knife. Now, he also told me that the two of them really love bourbon. So, what I wanted to do was make this kitchen knife and take some wood for the handle and for the wood holder from an authentic Kentucky Bourbon barrel lid. Now, I've done a bunch of knives with this wood before in the past, and I'm going to be doing a couple more, so keep an eye out over on my Etsy or on my website for some listings with Kentucky Bourbon barrel wood in the near future. But for now, let's jump right into this project. So we're going to make this kitchen knife out of 80 CRV2. It's a high carbon steel, and it is my current favorite budget steel for making kitchen knives when it comes to high carbon. So 80 CRV2 offers a little bit of stain resistance, which is nice, and a little bit of rust resistance, which is nice. Like all high carbon steel, it will patina over time, but 80 CRV2 has a lot of resistance to that knife patina, especially when exposed to acidic foods, which makes it ideal for high carbon steel kitchen knives. Now, there's a bunch of other steels that are even better than this, but this is what I got, and we're just making a nice budget knife, not something that's gonna run my dad 300 bucks. So I've got a knife that I did a while back. This was actually a custom piece, and I just really liked the shape. The handle fit really well in the hand, so I did a little trace out of it and threw it up on my wall with my collection of tracings. So for whenever I have a day that I'm just not sure what to make, grab a tracing, grab some steel, make a knife. So I'm going to throw this on here, line this up, and I'm going to draw this on here with chalk, so hopefully you guys can see it. I know the pencil's been kind of a bitch, and you haven't been able to see it on the video, so we're going to go for some chalk. See if we can see that better. And I'm just going to leave a nice full handle there, so I have plenty of material to work with. We're actually going to forge in these handle grooves here, but I'm just going to trace them on there so I have that just kind of in my head. Now, I could go with the Japanese style handle for this knife and make a little bit more width for the blade, but I think we're going to have just enough that you can use the knife and not have your knuckles hit the cutting board too much. Hopefully at all, but we'll see. And I'm going to extend the blade out because I want a really nice kitchen knife, so we're actually just going to slide my pattern down a little bit so I have that nice swoop for the tip. And we'll just take that back. And I think that's a pretty good kitchen knife shape. Now, the whole thing is going to be forged out. I'll have the blade forged out. So hopefully we'll draw that out another maybe 1/4 of an inch or so. Get a little bit of extra material on there. But for now, we're going to go ahead and just get this rough shape cut out over on my grinder. So I got that blade shape cut out there, And I also ground in a little groove here so I know where to start. And we're actually going to start by forging the handle out first. So we'll throw the knife in the forge here. Get a ripping. So I'm doing this in the propane forge as opposed to my coal forge because I just wanted to get this knife done today, and this is a lot quicker. It takes like 20 minutes to start the coal forge, and I don't have to do any super extensive forging. So we're just doing this in the propane for today. And I'm going to start by using the cross on the cross peen hammer. And we're just going to very carefully start hammering down. Flatten. And it's just kind of a slower process, but rinse and repeat until that little groove there gets down how I want it. Eventually I want to get a nice cross peen hammer that has a little bit of an angle to it. Make this a little bit easier. But we're getting there. There we're really starting to get that handle groove in there without bending the knife too much, which is exactly what we want. Transfer right over to working on the bevel here. Hopefully you can see the knife enough. So I try and do most of this forge work when I have to film early in the morning while it's still dark, but unfortunately the sun comes out so damn quick here. I just kind of struggle to get good lighting for you guys, so sorry about that. Hopefully in the next week or two when I get moved over to the new place, yes, that is still happening, I'll have a little bit better lighting outside. Won't be as much in the direct sun. You'll be able to see a bit more. But in the meantime, bear with me. So I'm just finishing out the edge here. I got my lighter hammer. Just lets me get a little bit more of an angle. Not quite as much force. So I can just make everything nice and even on this bevel. Save me some time at the grinder. Alright, so there's our rough shape forged out, and I'm going to go ahead and stick her back in the forge, bring her up to temperature, and then let her cool down slowly, and that's called annealing, and that's going to soften the steel and make all my grinding a lot easier. When we go over to the grinding, we're going to get that blade profile exactly how I want it, grind out these handle grooves, and clean everything up, and get it ready for heat treatment. So it's been a couple hours, and I have the knife here. Now the next step that I got to do is go through and grind out the final profile for this knife. So I've got this little bit of a clip right here at the top. It's got to get ground down. Everything on the back's got to be nice and flat, and then we got those grooves to do, as well as the blade itself, making sure everything's nice and clean. So I'm going to go ahead and hop over the grinder after I mark this up with some chalk real quick and start working on that. So I actually decided to change the shape of the handle a little bit here. I just had a little bit too much material on the end, and I thought this shape would look really cool, and it certainly does. So I got the little grip here ground in further too, so we've got enough room so you can use the knife and not hit the cutting board too much. So the next thing we're going to do is I got a brand new belt on here. So we're just going to go ahead and grind all this forge scale off, make everything nice and clean and flush, and then we'll either jump straight into the bevel or we'll drill holes for the handle. I'll make that decision when I get there, but for now, let's grind this guy clean. About as clean as I'm going to get it. Any little, little marks like that will be taken out when I go up to the next grit. But for now, I think I am going to just transfer over and drill some holes and do the handle pins. So another reason that we always anneal the knife before we start working on it is that softer steel is so much easier to drill through. There we go. I'll switch over and I'll just drill out that big bit, and then we're going to hop right over and do the rough bevel. When it comes to grinding a bevel, especially when it's a nice tall bevel like we've got going on here, slow and steady wins the race. Take your time. Make sure your edge is super straight before you go any further. Take material off from one side, then switch to the other. Go back and forth. Take your time, nice and slow. And just keep checking and make sure that you've got a nice even bevel going all the way around. And once I get up to the height that I want, I just go extremely slow and just make everything as nice and straight as possible with no wiggles. So there's the rough bevel. Not too shabby. I got a little wiggle here and a little tiny wiggle here that I'm going to clean up after I heat treat the knife. But I'm going to go ahead and behind the scenes go and harden the blade and then temper it in my tempering oven. Just save time. If you guys want to see how all that's done, check out one of my other videos, but we're just going to keep this video nice and short, and I'm going to go ahead and do all that behind the scenes. Alright, so it's day 2. I decided to temper the knife and let it sit all night, so when I jump back in I can just keep rolling with things and get this video to you guys as soon as I can. So, before we continue, I wanted to talk really quick about forge scale. Now, forge scale is kind of what accumulates during the forging process, whether you're working with a coal forge or propane forge. And what forge scale is, long story short, is a lot of impurities and crap that's within your steel that ends up kind of getting burned and comes right to the surface and coats your knife. So I have this railroad spike here, which was going to be a hatchet, which unfortunately I blew through it when I was hammering through the eye hole. But I can use it to show you guys forge scale. So this is what forge scale looks like after a knife has been in the forge. And it kind of crumbles and falls apart. If you rub it with your hand, it kind of falls off the knife. But what we want to do is we want to clean all of that shit off with the wire wheel before we bring it over to our grinding belts. Now the reason for that is that forge scale is actually super hard. In most cases it's a lot harder than the steel itself because it's got a lot of crap in it. That's harder than steel, that kind of comes to the surface. And we want to clean all that off because when we take it over to our grinding belts, if it's got forge scale on it, it'll break down your grinding belts a lot faster, and grinding belts are incredibly expensive. In the knife making world, probably the biggest percentage of my overhead is grinding belts, and I go through them very fast. So anything we can do to increase the longevity of those belts, we want to do. So we clean all the forge scale off of our knife over on the wire wheel, and that will look like this when it's done. So here's our kitchen knife, and I've gone ahead with the wire wheel and cleaned all that forge scale off. So now I can jump right over to my belts and start grinding and not have to worry about breaking down my belts with that forge scale. So I have my 120 grit belt here, and we're just going to go ahead and clean the face of the knife and the bevel, get everything nice and shiny, and then we're going to take it all the way up to 400. So I've got the knife, and she is currently at 220 grit. So I'm just going to take her to 400 now. But I wanted to stop real quick and show you guys the progress, and also talk a little bit about grinding. So, as you've seen, I do all of my knives by hand. I don't use a jig to do my bevels. I grind everything by hand, and the only bit of help that I have is this little plate right here, which keeps everything nice and flat. So here's the knife at 220, and I've got my 400 grit belt on here right now. So we're going to take that to 400 and then move over to the buffing wheel and buff it up. But I wanted to stop real quick and show you guys the knife, and I also wanted to talk a little bit about grinding. Now, a lot of guys use a jig. I don't. I just use this flat plate and I freehand. And it's one of those things that's a skill that takes a lot of time and a lot of experience to really get good at. And I still have little minor wiggles here and there, but I take my time and try and get those out as much as I can. Get things as nice and straight as I can. But until I have a few more years experience under my belt, it's really hard to get a super straight bevel, especially when you're doing these really nice big tall bevels. When you have something that's like, you know, comes up halfway, it's a lot easier to keep that straight all the way across. The taller you go, the easier it is to get those little wiggles in there. So I just take my time, go slow. You want to do the flat faces of your knife first, then your bevels, and that way everything's nice and clean, and you have a really nice sharp transition between your bevel and your knife face. So I'm just going to go ahead and just keep on getting this knife to where it needs to be. so there's the knife cleaned up. Nice and shiny. But there's still a few little tiny scratches in here that I want to get out. Now there's two ways that you can go about doing that. Now the first way takes a lot of time and energy and labor, and that is to grab varying grits of sandpaper, usually all the way up to about 1200, 1500 grit. And you just keep working your way up on grit with sandpaper, sand it down, clean it, sand it, clean it, so on and so forth. But I have a little trick that I've figured out over time, and that is to stick the knife in ferric chloride for about a minute or two. And now what that does is the ferric chloride is a super strong acid that eats away at the steel. Now, when you let it sit in the ferric chloride for long enough, it actually eats away a lot of the little scratches on the knife. The ferric chloride eats the surface of the knife nice and fast, and it's not quite able to get into those little cracks as easily. So if you let it sit for a minute or two in the acid, it'll take out a lot of those little tiny scratches instead of spending an hour or so with sandpaper getting everything out. But it only really works if you're able to get everything up to about 800 grit or so. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this in the acid, and I'll be back with you guys in just a minute or two. Alright, so I ended up doing two dips in the acid. After the first one that I did, I noticed a couple bigger scratches right on the face, so I just sanded those off, dipped it again, polished it up, so our knife is good to go. The only thing that I haven't done yet is put my edge on there, because I still got to work on the handle and the wood holder, and the last thing I want is a razor sharp edge that's going to cut me while I'm working on the knife, so I always leave that for last. Now again, for the handle, we're going to go with some authentic Kentucky Bourbon barrel wood. I've already cut out 2 chunks and put a little chunk of ebony in the center there, and that just keeps everything interesting, puts some contrast. I absolutely love the grain structure of this old bourbon barrel oak as opposed to modern oak. It's so much more interesting, and you can tell that the tree that was used was very old and had lots of time to grow and get that really awesome texture in there. Alright, so first things first, drill some holes for the handle. I got my one hole lined up, pull the knife out of the way. And then you want to have a couple pins prepped so that when you drill a hole, you can throw a pin in there. And we'll just move down to the next hole. And now for this one, we're going to keep the knife right where it is, but I'm going to hold on to it nice and tight so it doesn't go anywhere. I actually had one with an edge on it, and I held on to it, and it slipped out of my hands, and the drill ended up spinning it, and it came around and almost cut my damn finger off. So another reason why I try to always do the edge absolutely last, and then I don't have to worry about that in case she spins and cuts me. So now I gotta switch over to my bigger drill bit for the end, drill that hole, and then we're gonna trace everything out. I'm just gonna go ahead and trace the outline of the knife. Make sure you got your pins in the pinholes so nothing moves, and the knife's gonna be exactly where it's gonna sit. And I'm doing shell casing inlays for the back. It's going to look pretty sweet. Kind of keep that, all-American feel. Kitchen knife with bourbon barrel wood. Make everything nice and all-American. And then I'll have the front of my handle here. And so next step is to cut this out. there we have it. Now, before I cut this down the center and make my handle scales, I want to go ahead and clean this up and get that nice and polished, because it's easier to do while it's still one piece versus two. So there's the front of my handle scales, all nice and polished. Go ahead and scribe a line down the center for me to follow. And then, with the help of some editing, so there she is, all glued up. Now I just got to go through and shape the handle and finish it. Polish it up real nice. But before I do that, we're going to jump over and start working on the bourbon barrel wood holder. I have my two pieces of Kentucky Bourbon barrel. This is the star piece here. It's still got a little bit of writing on there that you can see. Now, there's two ways that I usually do wood sheaths. You can either take the two pieces, put them together, and mill out the inside. You see I've scribed in where the knife is going to be. So you can either mill out the inside, so your knife slides in there nice, or you can kind of cheat a little bit. Take a third piece of wood that's the right thickness, and that'll get sandwiched in between the two. And you just cut out the shape of your blade on this piece, and then glue everything together, and then knife slides in and out nice and easy. So we're going to go with that process for this knife, just because I want that really pretty spine going on here for the holder. Alright, it's day 3. I have the wood holder fully dried and ready to go, so hopefully I shouldn't have any problems with it when I go to grind on it. Should be completely together and won't pop apart on me at all. You've got the bourbon barrel face on this side, and then the bottom of the barrel, the char, on this side. So it's like you have one big chunk of bourbon barrel lid, which is basically what this was. So I've also got a knife. I went ahead and shaped the handle. Got everything nice and polished. And of course, she fits into the wood holder nice. Grabs it a little bit, which is exactly what you want, but you don't want it so tight that you have to fight it, so that when you turn it, it doesn't fall out. That's all you're looking for. Now, so I've got the little curvature of the knife handle here, and I want that to sit into the wood sheath nice and flush. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the knife, line it up about where it's going to sit here on the blade, and then I'm going to go ahead and just scribe a line there, this pencil, and I'm just going to see if I can't show you guys this. So with the knife sitting on top of the wood sheath, I'm just going to put a little mark where the handle needs to sit. And then I'm just going to kind of, on the grinder, give that a nice little swoop and cut that out, so you can see that right there. We're going to cut that out, and then the handle should fit in there nicely. I also have to grind the front of this nice and flat, because it's got a little bit of an overlap on the wood here. We just want to grind that nice and flat and flush. So I'm going to do that, and we'll cut this hole out. Perfect. I like it. A little bit more steel showing than I'd like, so I might take down the sides a little bit. But generally speaking, I'm happy with that. So the next thing I want to go ahead and do is bevel the edges of the wood holder here. That'll kind of create a nice little border effect on the bottom and on the top here. And it'll just make everything look a lot more interesting than just a flat surface. So all that's left to do now is put the final polish on the handle, and I'm going to go ahead and throw that edge on there behind the scenes, and I'll be right back with you guys for the sharpness test. Alright, so here's the knife. I actually decided to change the bevel. Went for a nice full, tall, flat grind. I just really didn't care for the wiggle that was going on there, and this should cut a lot better. Gets right down through it. That's exactly what I want to see. Get some pretty good thin slices with that. She dices nicely. I think she's ready to be sent off to her new owner. Thanks for watching till the end of this video. If you liked everything you saw, well, why don't you go ahead and hit that like button down below. It really helps me out a lot and helps the channel grow. If you're not already subscribed to this channel, well, then why don't you freaking hit the subscribe button too? Come on, what are you doing? Links in the description below to my Instagram, Facebook, Etsy, and website, www.therainyforgeblacksmithy.com. If you'd like to check out some of the awesome knives that I already have up for sale, well then check out my website or my Etsy. If you'd like to see some behind the scenes stuff and some awesome photos of my work, well then why don't you check out Instagram and Facebook. And also, now that I am in my new workshop, I should be able to get some videos out to you guys a little bit quicker. So stay tuned, and in the meantime, keep on keeping on.